Hey everybody, this is John Eric Bentley, the voice of Barrett Wallace from Final Fantasy VII The Remake, Nick Fury from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and so many other projects, and you are listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Casanova Podcast. Yeah.
Hi, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast for tech, entertainment, and more. The Casanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Casanova. I said that name a lot. Anyway, today we are joined by a very, very special guest, the one, the only, Idan Beck, the CEO and founder of Playtesting GG. Idan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you on. I know before we hit record, we were just chopping it up about music because we're both formerly of the music industry. But like, it's an honor to have you on. And today we're going to be talking about Playtesting GG. And as someone who does a lot of playtesting, I've done a lot of playtesting for PlayStation, Xbox, EA, Ubisoft, Nintendo when they want to be nice about it, other companies. I feel like the platform that you've created is very, very beneficial because playtesting is kind of scattered, or it has been very scattered all over the place. But you know what? I'm going to shut up. This is your show right now. Go ahead and just give us a rundown of you and everything that you're doing with Playtesting GG.
Yeah, let me start by talking a little bit about Playtesting GG and why we built it. I mean, what you just said is very true, but it's not just limited to playtesting. It's just making games in general is just really hard, and it involves lots and lots of people. And often those people are, very far away. They're in different countries. They speak different languages. And the reason that the game industry needs this is because you're not just making a game for the folks down your street. You're making it for the world. And often, actually, I'll channel my old professor from school, and he's now the director of IGM at RIT, and he said something that's very, I think, insightful, which is it's not a game until other people play it. Because ultimately, if it's just for you, then you can do that. But the only way you're making the game you want to be making is when other people play that. And the industry really depends on often armies of people to play test, to provide feedback, to go, really drill down on specific bugs and issues that come up in the game. And with all of this effort, still, the first day that your game is out to market, you're just scratching the surface, right? You still are going to get that wave of feedback from the real world. But the more you can prepare for that, the better. And we built this because we were, in the game industry ourselves, and we've talked to a lot of studios, and we've heard from every single person that this is a crucial, critical, tool in the tool belt. But it's very, it's just nobody loves their solution here. Most of the solutions are Slacks in the middle of the night, spreadsheets, emails, phone calls, whatever it takes, right? In a different life, I was, for a little while, the CTO of a company called Sandbox VR, and there we built our own games in-house. I have nothing to do with I'm not but I remember working with the QA team very fondly, and ultimately to solve these really complicated problems, we would just throw bodies at this problem because that was the best thing that we could do at that time. So walking away from that, realizing, hey, there's actually a really big need here, and a lot of studios are spending a lot of money on this stuff already. And so we thought about how can we build a really nice, clean end-to-end solution that takes care of the studios, gives them what they need, but also takes care of the testers and the QA folks, because I don't think people talk enough about them, right? As a QA person, as a tester, sounds like you've done a lot of that, and you might, this might resonate with you, right? You're often, opening and closing a door 20 times in a row. You're doing the same thing for an hour. And it's, it's funny because there's a saying that says, games are the work we choose to do, right? But when when your work is the games that you choose to do, it's just work, and ends up a lot of testers get fatigued, and a lot of things fall through the cracks, and there's no way to capture all of the information that you're gathering as you're testing and you're playing these games. And so that's what we really tried to build, is a really kind of end-to-end, set of tools and a solution that makes testers' lives better, easier, faster, more streamlined, and as a result gives a much better quality of playtesting and testing in general to the studios on the other side. So everybody kind of wins. So we've been building this for a while, and recently we launched it as Playtesting GG, which includes testers in the mix. So we actually have our own network of testers that we work with. We hire them. They're not just random people on the internet. We have a relationship with them. They use our tools. We train them to use the tools, and then studios give us their games, and the studios get a dashboard of issues, feedback, problems in real time. So you don't have to wait that long. Like in traditional QA and playtesting, our thing just kind of pops up. So that's maybe more than a nutshell, but that's a little bit about what we're building. And yeah, I guess I could talk about me if that's interesting, but I've been kind of a lifelong Silicon Valley cliche coder, whatever you want, plus in the music industry. So I'm kind of all over the place, but yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. And like would you mind speaking to like the importance of the real-time insights and feedback that your platform gives compared to, the more traditional or, what we've had so far within QA and QA testing? Because I know for me, when I was doing stuff for Microsoft and for other platforms, like it would be that monotonous, open this door, run down this hallway, execute this. And it's like doing that and then jotting down exactly what I did multiple times, and then having to send it to the person that is overseeing the QA, and then having them put it within like a spreadsheet or Slack or whatever. And that is, to me personally, a very archaic system. So from what you're telling me right now and what I'm looking at for Playtesting GG, the real-time insights, that's going to have profound effect for the gaming industry. But yeah, if you'd like to delve into that more.
Yeah, no, I mean, we hope so. So before we started building, we went and we talked to, I want to say, about 100 folks in the game industry across EA, Ubisoft, down to, a couple of guys in the garage. I was actually an adjunct professor for a while for the Interactive Games and Media Department at RIT. And I even had this problem as a teacher because students were submitting games to my class and I had to deal with all this stuff. And I was talking to even, other educators and lecturers in that world where, their goal as a department is to spit out some of the best game developers and game designers in the world, which they do. And those folks go to Bethesda and all these amazing, game studios. And so we talked to a lot of folks, including big outsourced QA houses. And we learned that often the cycle is 2 weeks. And a lot of these, outsourced QA providers actually have rules. Like if you don't get them the game by a certain cutoff, they can't guarantee that week or that a certain, deliverable. And because it takes a really long time to upload the game, somebody, in this case, somebody has to manually download it, run around with a zip drive, install it on a bunch of different consoles, PCs, what have you, right? They manage a large group of testers. In the industry, I've come to learn that they're affectionately called bums in seats. You have to manage your bums in seats. Not my term, but that's what these QA houses call them. But yeah, you because what happens, it's kind of, imagine a big warehouse full of literally couches and TVs or whatever gaming platform, and somebody hits the okay, 9 to 5, let's start the shift, and everybody sits down and plays the game, and if that game isn't there, then they can't guarantee the results. So this whole world is very, to your point, a bit archaic. Not because it has to be, just because it's been the way it's been done. So our solution, we literally upload the game into our servers. We have kind of our own solution there. We distribute the game. So when a tester uses our solution, they're using a client, like a desktop client we've built, and so that ensures they're testing the right build. And sure, it doesn't happen in 2 seconds because games can be gigabytes in size, but it does happen immediately. And as soon as they play the game, that session is recorded, uploaded, and even annotated. We transcribe what they're saying, and we use, AI powered categorization. So when you're basically playing the game, it keeps track of what you're saying, and it can detect when you say, "Oh, this is broken," it's like, "Oh, that's an issue," and it just catalogs that automatically. The team sees that popping up on the dashboard as you do it. And so that means when you do a 1 hour of testing, you've done 1 hour of testing. You don't have to reach out to anybody and tell them, because they're just going to look at that report, at that high level dashboard, and see, oh, okay, we see a bunch of sessions popping up. We see a bunch of feedback coming in. And then they can choose to do whatever they want with that, be it send it to something like Jira, or to say, you know what, we're not going to deal with this, and delete that, because it's not a thing they're going to worry about. So yeah, that's how we envision the sort of new way of getting feedback on your game. And it's nice because we can really bring a lot of these tools to the testers. That means that you're no longer doing a lot of these sort of guesswork things of like, oh, did they get the thing I said, or did I capture the video correctly? Because our system does all of that automatically as well.
That is a game changer. Well, I mean, and so the fact that, you have your own private servers that house the game to distribute it, and you're able to capture the footage. Also, the integration with AI. I know a lot of people, AI is a very sensitive topic these days. A lot of people either hate it or against it or for it. But the thing is, the cap's off the bottle. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point. There are a lot of benefits to AI, especially when it comes to testing in this type of environment. But when it came to implementing the AI technology into your software and your platform, was it very hard to like air test it or to get it to where it's like accurately representing? Or can you walk us through that?
No, it's a great question, and I have a lot to I have a lot to say about AI. It's been an interest of mine since I was a little kid.
Feel free.
I was between Sandbox and starting, this. I was actually at Unity in the AI organization, and I worked, in things involving machine learning, reinforcement learning, and even neural-based graphics, which I'm personally very passionate about. I think that AI is a bit of a complicated subject in the gaming world and in the creative industries. Even as a musician, right? I look at some of the things that are being put out, like Suno or what's the other one? Udio? I don't know, but
Udio, yeah.
Yeah, these things that are putting out essentially commercial grade. And look, like I've spent 20 hours trying to master a track. I'm like, wow, this sounds good. I'm like, wow. But I see it as a big hammer that creators, because ultimately you have to separate the creation, the generation of this content from the value of it as content, right? Like people don't listen to a song because of how it's made. People listen to a song because of how it makes them feel, right? And whether or not you use some AI tool to do that, or you bang two rocks together, or you spend 30 years learning how to play an instrument, right? The truth is the way other people perceive that art is up to them. And I think that's the missing piece that people don't talk about, especially with these like song generators, this content stuff. If you can actually make something that moves people, great. Now you've given these creators this much more leverage. But, it doesn't change the fact that the creating process is just something that you do, right? That like you can use these tools. And if you've tried these, song creators, like they sound great, but they're not my song. And they're certainly not something that it's great if I'm making like a quick, like 30-second launch video and I need some, okay, I want bossa nova in the style of like, Jimi Hendrix or something, like cool, like give me that and I'll stick it in there. because I'm not going to go hire a band and write a song and spend 3 months on a 30-second launch video. But at the same time, I'm probably not going to put out an album with AI content because that's me. That's not, and it's not me. Like, so sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there.
No. Fine.
So the way that we look at AI is as, can we give these tools to folks? So the way that we integrate the AI stuff into our tooling is at the highest level transcription, right? Okay, I'm playing a game, I'm saying stuff, that transcribes. We're using, OpenAI's Whisper for that. And it's pretty good, and it gets better every day. And there are other alternatives to doing that, but ultimately that is AI that transcribes what you're saying into text. And then we take that text and we analyze it, and we're looking, what is the tester saying, right? Are they saying translate what's on screen? Because then we can give them that ability to do that. Are they saying this is a problem? Well, if they do, then that means that's a bug, and we just categorize that automatically. And so that's kind of how we look at it. We're like using the AI almost like as an over-the-shoulder buddy, if you will, and giving you kind of additional benefits and capabilities in that moment where you might need them. We're not really using the AI in a way that's creating anything. It's really about the, giving in that moment. Well, what's your alternative? You can go and look up, get a Japanese dictionary and go word by word. Good luck with that. I studied Japanese, so actually, just the notion of that is difficult to even imagine. But, but that's kind of what you can use AIs to give people these tools and abilities in these moments, and then they can choose how to use it. So we don't really kind of force it down people's throats. But there are certain cases like categorization of issues and that kind of thing where this really stands out. And the way that we do this is we're really paying attention to the quality, because we get feedback from studios and they tell us, hey, you know what? Like, look, 1 hour of game testing can result in 1,000 points of feedback and comments and questions and issues, right? That's information overload. So we're getting a lot of feedback from the studios. They're saying, hey, this is too much. This is too little. We don't like this. We want more of this. And so we have to kind of, fine tune it. And on top of it, all this AI stuff is just using the capabilities we've built. So anything that I'm talking about, you can go in and manually do. So you can add manual annotations. You can add, categorizations on your own. So the AI is not really doing anything. It's just kind of like a shortcut to give you time back. But some people don't use it. Some people prefer to do it manually. Like they'll do an hour of testing, and then they won't turn the mic on, and they'll go back and at minute 13 and double click, make a little comment there. It just depends on what people want to do. As long as the studio is getting what they need and that feedback that makes the game better, we don't really have an opinion about that. So that's how we approach the AI side of it. It's just really tools for our testers, but not much the other way around.
Okay. Like one of the things like I definitely want to touch on that you said that I fully agree with is the part about like giving time back. So like for me as a creator, podcaster and journalist, like I use AI tools. I know that's taboo as a creator to say, because people like I've seen people see like open AI, because I use it for like jotting down thoughts and for organizing and planning out things. And I did a video where that was on my taskbar and people saw it and they're like, oh, he uses open AI, and I'm like, yes, I do. But getting that time back is quite invaluable. I mean, as a creator, the platform I'm using it right now to record this podcast, allows me to do vertical videos and this, and it does transcribing and stuff that would normally take me hours on my own. So like the time that AI can give back to you is very invaluable. But like the transcribing, getting that information over to developers, that's absolutely critical. I mean, and that can solve a lot of issues. Like you said, it can open up a lot of other ones. Like, hey, this is too much information. But the fact that they have the capability of manually going in and tinkering with here and there, that's invaluable. So one of the things I definitely want to ask you about as well is when it comes to the play testers, like what is that process? How do you guys vet who to work with or who to establish a relationship with to work on this? Because as a creator, it's worked with a lot of brands and partnered with a lot of brands. I see a lot of creators that they'll sign the NDA and then leak stuff out. And I don't know if it's because I've been in corporate world and I've done a lot of information security. Like that kind of irritates me seeing that. But like there are creators that like to do that because they think that it can give them a boost on the
Mhm.
back end. It actually hurts them a lot. But how do you vet out people to prevent that from happening?
It's a great question. So foremost, I should say that the on the IP side and the sort of privacy of information side, this usually is us actually between us and the studio. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll get a sense from them. To what degree is this secret? Like, are we working on a game that's in live operations and people that we don't want people to know about what's coming next, or maybe they don't care. So a lot of it comes down to that.
Okay.
The studio may need to require the testers to sign an NDA, and if that's the case, then we do that, and we kind of cultivate a group out of our tester network that is willing to do that, because some folks don't want to necessarily do that. And so the kind of shorter answer is it's on a case by case basis. With that said, our solution is largely on our system.
Mm-hmm.
We can look. We can't stop people from doing things that they shouldn't be doing, like taking screenshots and posting them. And when we detect that, we have to obviously take action. But for the most part, we haven't had any of that happening.
Okay.
Our testers, this is probably not the answer you would expect to that kind of question, because on the IP, like ultimately, legally speaking, we do what we have to do. And in some cases with certain studios, we run everything in these sort of isolated, air-gapped on-prem environments. Some of our studios have really sensitive IP that they license from other people. And so, it kind of varies by intensity of scrutiny based on what they need. But some guys that we work with, 4 people in a garage, and they just want anybody to see what they're doing, and so they don't care. So there's a spectrum.
Okay.
With all that said, the real answer to this question actually has more to do with what we're doing for testers. Um, a lot of our testers are from all over the world. Look, today we're early on. In the future, I'd love for us to be able to pay testers, whatever they want. Obviously measured by what people are willing to pay. Right? We're trying to build essentially a marketplace where folks that provide services get paid for those services based on the value that people are willing to pay. Today, we're not doing that. Today, we have a set a range that we can pay testers while still keeping our lights on. But it's very comparable to what a lot of folks in this industry are paying. The big difference between us and them is, we're charging $15 an hour to the studio,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're not actually making a lot. We're not like multiplying it by 100 or something. We're paying folks between $5 to $10 an hour, depending on where they are in the world, what kind of platforms they have available to them, and so on. And to some people we work with, $5 an hour is a life-changing amount of money. Maybe not in the U.S. so much, and
Yeah.
but I've been had the privilege of traveling the world and seeing places where $5 an hour is an above average salary, and we can give that to people with nothing more than, say, an Android device. And so we see this as a real power for good, because ultimately, if we can help people pay their bills, pay for school, things like that, make their life better by playing games, which, by the way, they're playing for free. Most of our testers are so excited because they come to us and they were playing games for free before, right? And we have a very accurate system of detecting, we literally measure hours and minutes, and we pay people exactly what they do. So the truth is, the real answer to how do we keep people on the level is we treat them well. And and for the most part, we give folks an opportunity that is really hard to get other ways for them. And so if you create, I think, that environment where, to the best of our abilities, obviously people are people, everybody's got, things, we're doing our best every day, but we treat them well, and we deliver to them something that is really important to them. Right. A lot of our testers are also game developers. I kind of get this as an ex-musician, right? Because I'm like, man, if I look at the amount of money I made on the production side of my music, I'm like, I can tell you the number. It's $70, and my songs got everywhere. It's not like, but like, it's really hard to make money as a musician. It's really hard to make money as a creator. So actually, this is a famous, not a famous story. I can't talk about names, but the people involved were famous. But I had a buddy of mine who was living with his friend in Vegas, his friend was a pretty famous and still is pretty famous DJ.
Mhm.
But my buddy was ghost producing for him in return for rent, right? You know, which I was like, actually, that's like a pretty good deal. You know, he was making much more money than, and so sometimes, you know, in being a creator, it's really hard. And so, you know, a lot of our testers, I know they're interested in game development. In some cases, we have a channel where, you know, I share, you know, information about how you can learn to do that stuff. And in a way, we get to help, you know, essentially fund a lot of these people's real passions of wanting to become game developers, game designers, which is it's a hard industry to break into. So I know it's a kind of a weird answer to give to, like, how do we keep people from like sharing stuff online? It's like, well, we just make it something that they care about, and if we do that well, then they'll generally not want to. I think one of the big differentiations between us and a lot of the other, let's call it similar services, is we're only charging $15 an hour, right? And that means we're not making a lot of profit like a lot of these other folks, which are multiplying whatever they're paying their testers by 10, right? But the reason we do that is we believe that ultimately, if we do build what could be an Uber for game testing, right, just like Uber does, it's competitive both to its consumers, meaning the people taking the cars, but also to their drivers, because people go to Uber as a driver. Because it's a better alternative. It's a better platform than the other alternatives. So that's kind of one of the things that we're thinking a lot about, is how do we not make money off of margin, which is just making money off of people's backs. How do we make money by providing the best thing that we possibly can provide, giving testers the best experience they can get, and the studios the best product they can receive? So we're not just trying to be cheaper, we're trying to be better on all dimensions. And then everything else kind of takes care of itself. At least that's my opinion. What I believe, you know, we'll see what happens.
No, I mean, I would say like providing value, which is what you guys are doing, and like that goes a very, very long way. And just in any type of entrepreneurial or creative endeavor, providing value, providing a service that, you know, people can get a lot from, that will go down, it will go the length and then back around. So that right there is already game changing. And the other thing I want to ask you is, like, for companies that do decide to utilize your platform and services, do they need to come up with their own testing plan, or are you guys, like, you work hand in hand with creating it for them, or, you know, tailoring it to their needs specifically?
It really depends. It depends on the studio or the creators that we're talking about. Some folks don't know what a test plan is that we work with. And that's fine. We take their game, and honestly, the great thing about games is that if you give me a game and I can't figure it out, then you've got a problem. Right? Like, already out the gate, right? Like, nobody is sitting there with your player telling them how to play your game. You know, they download it on Steam or whatever, and they hit play, and they like it or they don't. That's it. That's the brutality of this industry. So the flip side of that is, hey, you give me your game and I don't know how to play it, well, you're going to get a lot of feedback. So often open-ended feedback and play is actually much more valuable. And I think if you speak specifically about playtesting is generally like that. You know, there is no plan. Just, hey, let's get a bunch of people playing this game and see what their feedback is. With that said, some folks do have an explicit test plan. We actually have a functionality where you can assign specific tasks to our testers, and we'll then assign it to whoever it makes sense. And in some cases, we'll people will want a test plan, and we can make one for them. We've seen a lot of these things, and so we can generally say, okay, you know what, this is what you want to test reliably, and so on. And we'll kind of, work with them on that. Eventually, we're going to turn that into a, formal part of the product where you can then add a test plan to the system. But today it's through us. But yeah, it's it's kind of all the above. What we usually like to do, we take the game in and we'll just try to run it, play it, kind of kick the tires on it a little bit. And then we'll come back to the studio and say, okay, cool. Like, here's some questions. Do you have a test plan? Do you want us to make one? Do you want just to play it for X hours per week? Like, what do you want to do? And then they'll give us sort of the direction from there. So it depends on what they're looking for. And different studios have different wants and needs throughout the development cycle of a game. So If you're in like pre-production concept, you're just asking for, what's the mechanics? Are they working? Right? Are people not using it correctly? And in that like 6 months ramping up to release, you might have a much more formal regression test plan of like, hey, I want to test these 10 things every day for 3 hours until we launch, just to make sure that those things aren't broken. So I guess, as it's called in the industry, like smoke testing. We can offset a lot of that load from the team.
Okay. And I see that you guys have 3 different pricing plans, Indie, Pro, and on Enterprise. And can you run us through that briefly, or however you want to go about it?
Yeah. We have 3 plans. The first plan, I'm personally the most excited about that one. So it's just we include 4 free hours a month of testing. So you don't pay us anything. It's free to try. It's free to use. And every month you get 4 new hours. So we believe that anybody should get feedback on the game that they're making. So what's nice about that is we don't charge anything for that. And once you go past that, you have to purchase additional hours at $15 an hour. So the free plan, you can get going right away, and it's free. The middle plan, the Pro plan, that one, you're almost like pre-buying a little bit of hours. It's a per seat model. That doesn't limit the number of people on your team that can use it. So anybody on your team can look at it and so on. But, only so many seats are people that we're speaking with and engaging with. So say you have a larger team and you want them all to be speaking to us. That's kind of what you're paying for. And after you get 10 hours of testing per seat. So it's kind of a lower price. And then on top of that, beyond that, you're only paying $12 an hour, I believe, on top of that, which is a little bit cheaper than our kind of, top line, like the sticker price. And then the last plan is one where we kind of engage with a studio at a much sort of lower level. In this case, we might be building custom solutions for them. Like, for example, we have the ability to integrate with build pipelines like Jenkins, where your game just comes in automatically into our system. We even have certain automation capabilities that we've built out for studios, where a game comes in and automatically these things happen, and you get kind of a report or whatever it is that you might want. So there we are kind of acting more like an outsourced QA house, or more like a even a solutions, automation solutions provider for these studios. So these tend to be like AAA studios, larger publishers, folks like that, which maybe they're 300, 500 people, and they've got certain objectives and goals that they want to kind of pursue that maybe are outside of their kind of core development budget. So, and that's much more of a, ELA type of relationship with them.
Okay. All right. So, and then it's multi-platform and fairly flexible as well.
Yeah, multi-platform in gaming. It's that's always the tough one. So yeah, we support pretty much all platforms. We have 3 different modalities. It's actually kind of so our main one is upload the game. Our testers run it. Obviously, that's really good for PC and Windows and Mac. But we also support that for Android. iOS isn't as friendly to a lot of these things. So we actually have an SDK for iOS where you can actually take what we've built and drop it into your game. And then you get a little button. And then your testers or our testers can hit that button and then upload sessions from inside of the game. And this is sort of how we bypass all of the iOS system protections, because we're no longer on their system. We're actually inside of your game. And so we can kind of be flexible around that. Although even back, other than that, we also have the ability to just capture your screen, almost like imagine an OBS++ mode. So we can kind of do anything there. It's what happens with multi-platform is, even do VR as well. And we have to kind of, navigate a lot of the sort of complexities of those platforms. And so our testers are well-versed in this. We train them with our tooling. So it's kind of like not a thing you have to worry about unless you want to integrate our SDK, which is, not for everybody. But generally speaking, given that a majority of game development is on Windows and PC, that's our sort of flagship platform. And there we can kind of do anything. But once we get into some of the more exotic platforms, say like Apple Vision Pro. You got to talk to us. But the main ones, it's quite well trodden. So
Okay. Well, shifting gears a little bit. Let's talk about music. So we were talking about that before we started recording, and you mind giving us a rundown of your background in music?
yeah. So I mean, I was started playing guitar really young, maybe like 9 or 10, I forget. And then in college and in high school, I was like a semi-pro, meaning I was playing jazz guitar for like my high school band, but they would like hire us out to all these different places. So I was like doing a gig, like 2-3 gigs a week. Even got paid. It wasn't that much, but it was kind of fun. I taught guitar growing up, and in college I was in a bunch of bands, got into electronic music and production, things like that. But yeah, I was always really interested in getting a guitar to sound more and more like a synthesizer because of my experience in jazz. I would be playing in these groups. My buddy John was on trumpet, and he would just hit this note, and the whole place would be like, "Whoa!" Freaking out. And you're playing guitar, and I know you're a guitar player too, right? We were talking about this before. You play guitar, and if you play one note, it's gone. It goes into this disappears, and so you kind of have to like diddle around that. And so I built this thing. Really, was just like a MIDI guitar controller kind of thing. And then I don't know if you remember this thing called the Monome back in the day.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember seeing the Monome and just being so enamored with it. And I was like, but wait a minute, the guitar kind of looks like a grid. I wonder if you could kind of combine the two ideas. And so I built this prototype with LEDs and a fretboard with like, the sensor thing and this is sort of when like the Silicon Valley sort of thing kicked in, and I'm just playing it. I'm making music with it. I'm, producing at the time, like electronic music with it. And I showed it to a few folks. I'm like, wow, like Guitar Hero was all the rage at that time. And they're like, wow, it's like Guitar Hero, but like with a real guitar, like you teach people how to play. And long story short, that's what we did. We built it. We shipped like a lot of these in the world. It was really fun. It was a lot of fun. Definitely the right company to start when you're like 24, 25. I would give demos. Actually, my favorite story when I was still building the early prototypes, I went to a show. If you're familiar with Miami Horror by any, I don't know if they're still, Miami Horror is still, doing really well. But it was at a concert, and this venue, I used to know all the like people that worked there, but they were all on vacation that day. So like the bouncers and the audio guy were like strangers to me. And I was trying to get backstage to see the musicians to show them this thing I was building. But I just kept on hitting that brick wall, which is, okay, oh yeah, you know a guy? Okay, cool. So does everybody here. So I had a phone, like it was an early iPhone, and I was like, man, this phone sucks. Like I need a new phone. Anyways, so I pulled up a picture of, at the time, was I don't know if it was called the G-Tar, but it later became known as the G-Tar. I pulled up a picture of it with all the LEDs on and all this stuff. And I just took my phone, like I threw it on stage. I just was like, whatever, worst case, I have to get a new phone. And I forgot his name, but Miami Horror's keyboardist picked it up and looked at it and like came over. It was like, what's this? And like talked to me a bit. And he's like, oh, I got to introduce you to Josh. And so Josh was the lead singer. He comes over, and yeah, we ended up getting, talking to them. And that's actually how we met Kimbra and Kimbra's band, and Timon and Kimbra's band used it, on tour. And it was a fun thing to do when you're like in your early 20s and you can call that work. It was like, oh yeah, I was out till 2 a.m. hanging out with these musicians, and but it was work. It was very serious business was taking place. But it was very fun. We built a real business around this. We had it actually took your phone, you put your phone into the cavity of the body. It would light up the LEDs to teach you how to play. It would connect to the internet and download songs. I mean, it's funny, you talk about this now and it sounds like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But this is like 2010 or 11. Yeah. Back then, the idea of a cloud connected device didn't exist. We literally had to build this whole IoT thing and whatever. And at that time, just none of it existed. Right. At that time, nobody was going to China and building stuff in factories. So it was a really cool experience. We launched it. We did a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter did well. We launched the Kickstarter on stage at TechCrunch Disrupt. that never really been done before, and that did well. I mean, it was almost like a whole season of that show, Silicon Valley or something, but in a very niche market, unfortunately. And that's kind of what was the end of that business. Is it went for a while, but it's a niche of a niche of a niche, right? Like it's music, and then guitars, and then guitar devices, and then education. So it's like, okay. But it was a lot of fun, and I really value that time. So
It's really crazy when you think back to like 2010, which doesn't, and I'm not sure if you feel the same way. Like that doesn't feel that long ago at all. And it's like you really sit and think about it. And it's like, oh, wait, that's 14, 15 years ago. But it's crazy the technological advancements that we've had from there to now. It's just crazy. Like you were saying, cloud, always connected cloud. That wasn't really something people thought about. I remember when Xbox was really kind of pushing out the Xbox One, always online, always connected. People were scared of it, but now it's like that's the norm, and it's wild. Like I don't know, technology is so crazy how much we progressed, and I don't think a lot of the everyday consumer ever really stops to think about that. But when you're on the tech aspect of it, it's like, man, we've come a long way.
No, I still remember having to wait an hour to download one song
on LimeWire.
Yeah, like on whatever it was, like Napster or whatever.
Yeah,
and I remember just queuing up, waiting a week to download an album or something. And I remember back then I would have I got like a CDR burner, a CD burner, right? And my car at the time somehow had an MP3 function, and so I had these CDs of like all this and like my car was just full of CDs with MP3s and whatever. And now I came across this like binder. You used to have binders of CDs,
Yeah.
And I'm looking through, I'm like, man, I remember all this stuff. and it's like now I just beep boop boop, and I've got whatever song I want, in like 2 seconds. It sounds silly, but it's funny too, though. I think it sometimes it can go too far the other way. So yeah. I used to be a DJ, and in college I helped start a nightclub, and I was doing all that stuff. But I used vinyl. And I loved vinyl. I would basically make money every week DJing. I wouldn't make that much, maybe like $70 or $100 or something. And I'll take that entire paycheck, and I would basically just buy records for the next week. And I love that, right? And I would just have these crates of records, and that experience of like being a DJ, going through, people having a good time, just the whole thing was great. And then I remember Serato came around, which was wonderful innovation, right? I mean, if people aren't familiar with Serato, basically it's like take a vinyl, take a record, and it just has a signal on it, and it goes into a little box, and the box connects to your computer, and then you can play an MP3 or whatever song off your computer. Big innovation because no longer do I have to carry, literally I would carry these crates of vinyl every time I went to a gig, which sometimes was pretty far, and I didn't have a car at the time. So, it was a nice, okay, I have a little box and like 2 records I had to bring with me. But then I lost that crate digging experience, and I had such a hard time because I couldn't like look at the record and be like, oh yeah, this one I had a good time 2 weeks ago. That was a great, oh yeah, you have this pattern matching thing that's at a higher level that you lose with, okay, well, now I have like an iTunes looking list of songs, but I don't think about music that way, right? And so, you adapt, of course. The benefits of having a bajillion songs on my laptop versus carrying 70 pounds worth of vinyl everywhere I went, obviously much better. But there was a sort of, something died and didn't translate, and so it's technology giveth and taketh away.
So I guess one of my final questions when it comes to like, I guess tech and music and everything like that, we're in this weird kind of flux where physical media, I don't want to say it's dying, but it's pulling back, because I think there's always going to be a market for it. But how do you feel about this pretty much all digital immediate access that we have to things? But at the same time, it can be taken away just like that. You know, if a license comes up or something like that. How do you feel about that? Because I know in games and tech right now, that's kind of, well, games, music, that's really a hot topic.
Yeah, it's just kind of what I was talking about. The upside of the distribution, the immediate digital distribution of things, the upside of that is so up.
Yeah.
The potential and the value of that is great. Because ultimately, so many things in my life that otherwise I would never be able to retain, I can now go on YouTube and I can listen to this music from like 97 that, you know what, I never could even find that CD at the store. Right. And if you spend enough time and you dig like I do for these weird little cuts and strange, 1999 jungle remix of so-and-so, it can be a wonderful thing.
We got a whole generation that's like, what are you guys talking about? Sam Goody, Tower Records. Like, come on, that was a time.
It was. But look, like, I mean, I live in San Jose, California. Down the street from here, there's still, Rasputin and a bunch of these record shops that are still stood the test of time. And in San Francisco, you still have Amoeba Music, of course, the staple, right? And to a degree, it actually kind of, I think, makes physical media more special. So, like, yeah, you lose just by volume. Like, okay, where is all this stuff? To your point, I mean, that's too much, right? And you have maybe people in your life that bring it to you, or you watch, different podcasts or videos and you get that curation from the external world, which is great. And I think it's created this whole ecosystem of people that are there to just like help you discover this awesome stuff. On the other hand, I think it's just lent all this value to the physical media, right? Like it's funny to say that vinyl outlived CDs, right? And it may continue to do really well. I still have all of my records. I'm never throwing those away. Right. Those are special to me. Even if I never use them, which is the funny thing. Like I have the record, but I listen to Spotify instead. There's something really tangible about owning a thing. That honestly, like now I've got kids, they've got so much stuff. I'm not going to buy any new records. I'm done buying more stuff. But when I was in my early 20s and you don't have that many things that are yours, I actually think that I haven't been 20 in a while, but I have a feeling
I'm right there. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. But I think that people get these certain things in their life that to them are really special and important. You and I might look at it and be like, what is that? But like to them, those are the things that they care about. Right. Like ultimately, this is, I think, actually going to be a weird turn, but human beings, we're embodied. We have a body. We live in a world, right?
Yeah.
The things around us have meaning. And we may not be aware of what that meaning is, but we know it's there because when you walk into a room and you get that feeling, you're like, oh, these things. And that's how you're living your life every single day. So the digital world, I think in certain places can replicate that, especially with video games. Actually, I think certain games like Minecraft's a really great example of this, where you can recreate that sense of value, of embodiment that we live our day to day in. So that's actually one of the reasons I'm so passionate about games, because I think that that's where we can bring out from the digital noise true human meaning, more so because if you think about games in particular, right, like this is where things get married. You've got music meeting art, meeting 3D art and animation and storytelling, and also, the sense of mastery, all these different things that, sure, you get like a face of that with certain media, but you don't get the full picture. And eventually, as games become more and more immersive, I mean, there's obviously a negative connotation to that.
Yeah.
Right? Certain things are bad about that. But there's a lot of bad things in the world that are addictive as well. But I think that what's really I think we all experienced it during the pandemic, where we literally couldn't go outside, and I turned to games that were community driven. I got to spend time in the metaverse with people and meet people from all over the world. And that was really awesome. So, I mean, I know we're kind of recoiling from that now, but I don't think it's going to go away. So there's a two-sided, I think, thing here. Digital, it can be depressing.
Yeah.
It can be too much, overwhelming, devaluing, all of that, sure. but also it holds, I think, promise, and it holds a lot of value for what can come and what you can take from it. So I don't know. I hate to end it on it's moderate. It's like all things. It's like moderation, like not too much, not too little. It's like not really an answer, but I don't know. It's what we got, so we have to kind of figure it out, I guess.
And it's one of the interesting things. Like I was talking to a couple other content creators and some of the people who comment on my game review videos, and they'll often say like, "Hey, I beat this AAA game or this indie game, and there's nothing to play. I have nothing to play now." And I'm just thinking, I have no idea how you can come to like that mentality when you can access things so quickly. We have Game Pass, you got EA Origin, you got all these ways to immediately play things. Nintendo Switch Online with the catalog of games, and it's usually younger people, probably early 20s, they're saying that, or people born in 2000 or late 90s. And I this is an old man in me, but I tell people, like, if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s and your exposure to games was game magazines, typically Game Pro, EGM, tips and tricks, whatever, and whatever you saw at KB Toys, Toys R Us, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and you typically got a game. Either it had to be on sale and your parents were like okay with it, or you like a summer job or something like that, or you got it on your birthday or Christmas. Like that was literally it. We had a game that we would just stick with for a long time, whereas now it's like, what do you feel like playing? It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. So that's one of the upsides that I think a lack of perspective from a younger generation who just never experienced what we did.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, I have nothing to play. No, you have a lot to play. Go clear your backlog.
No, totally. I think a lot about this experience. So, it's like the paralysis of choice, right?
Yeah.
You have all this choice and then you're spending all this time choosing instead of doing. And then you forget that, like, hey, I'm choosing to do a thing. I'm not doing that thing. I'm choosing. I'm spending too much.
Yeah.
I think a lot about this with my kids. So I got one of those little SNES boxes. It's like a little mini.
Yeah.
And you turn it on and look, I don't have to tell you, but I'll tell folks that maybe aren't familiar. Back in the day, you get like a box, the console, and you have to take a cartridge and stick it in there, right? And cartridges were pieces of plastic that took up space in a shelf somewhere or whatever, right? Like you didn't have that many of these things. And then when I was a kid, I'd go to Toys R Us and beg my parents for just one more, and sometimes I'd get my way and most of the times not. And but I remember with the NES, I had the most cartridges, but like 10. I had 10 games, right? And to your point, you had the game, and that was it. Like that's your game. You can't like change. Maybe you can change to a different game you own, but it's like, okay, well, I already played that one. But my kids, I gave them this box, and they're young. They're like 5 and 3, and I'm hoping that through just like banging their head against this thing, they learn how to use computers and systems and things like that. So I think games have a lot of benefits in that sense. But the problem is, you turn this thing on, and it gives you a menu of like 30 or 40 or 50 different games you can play. And I'm like, I never had 50 games all at once.
Yeah.
Ever, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, and it also breeds this really negative habit I've noticed, which is they'll play a game for a few minutes and can't figure it out. And then they turn it off and choose a different game.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't know. Like, when I had like the first Mario and I couldn't get past the 3rd level, guess what? I'm playing the first level again. Like, there's no choice. I could go outside or I could play Mario. Those are the 2 choices you had. So I think actually, to your point, right? Like all this choice is making us forget what's important. Yeah. The choosing and the maximization, like, not to get weird here, but like, I think a lot about this with relationships too.
Yeah.
Because often when I was a kid, here are the people in your network. Here's who you have. You don't have the whole world. You just have these like 5 people in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? And you kind of had to figure it out. Like you couldn't go and I don't like you guys. I'm going to go just like download a new friend. But that's where the good relationships came from, was overcoming those differences and and that stuff. I think a lot about this because, I think that these days it's so easy to just hit reset.
Yeah.
Because there's more stuff coming down the line and you're just like, well, maybe that stuff's better. But the truth is, it's not. It's on average. It's on average, right? And so, yeah, maybe you got unlucky, and those 5 options in front of you are below average. Maybe it's unlikely. It's very uncommon, but it can happen, right? But that's not going to get solved with 1,000 new things. It's going to get solved with another, 4 or 5 tries. So I don't know. I think a lot about that with my kids. How do I give them, I don't want to shield them. I don't want to prevent them from experiencing the entirety of the world because of things like YouTube. I can go learn anything on YouTube. That's wonderful, right? But that anything and that everything ends up being the thing you do versus the specific, okay, well, what am I learning? What am I actually doing? So I think a lot about that. It's one of the things I think that's really great about games like Minecraft. I have less experience with Roblox, so I won't speak to that, but I think I watch my kids play Minecraft. My 3-year-old is figuring it out. They want to play it so bad. They overcome all of this friction. I don't give them the controller. I just give them the computer, like a desktop computer. Figure it out, right? And they have to learn how to use a computer to play the Minecraft, the thing that they want. They get the nugget. They get the carrot for the effort. But Minecraft has such a variety of things that they can do, but they have to figure out how to get there. And they have to go through that bottleneck and overcome that. So I don't know, but obviously they have friends, they talk. Eventually 5-year-olds become 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds. And so we'll see how long I can hold up the dam. But for now, it's okay.
All right. So one of the last questions I have before we go is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Or, we also get developers in the industry that watch this podcast. Anything you want them to know about Playtesting GG before we go?
Sure. I mean, what we want is to really help folks get the games that they want out to market. We want to help folks make the things that obviously we can't help you make the game. That's you.
Yeah.
you're the creator here. We're not interfering. But we want to make sure that what you're building is what you want it to be from the perspective of your players, because often there's a big difference between what you see and what your players see and experience. Sometimes even in the sense that they can't run your game because whatever reason, and server reason here. But at a higher level, maybe that dialogue you thought was clear isn't clear, right? Maybe the way that people see this particular thing isn't as aesthetically appealing in the way that you see it, right? I think that you have to sort of be humble and modest about the fact that your players do ultimately decide what your game is, and understanding that is critical. It's really critical. It's really hard, and it's hard for now to replace that with anything but other people playing your game. And it's hard. That takes a lot of time to get your friends to play and get you feedback, all that stuff. And so, that's what we're trying to really help with. And, for us, success looks like better games, people playing your game and having a really great experience. And we're early on. We want people's feedback. We want people to use what we've built, tell us how we can make it better, right? Tell us, oh, this sucks, make this, we need this feature, you're missing this. We're already getting that a lot from the studios we work with, and we want more of it. So that's kind of, if there's one thing to take away, is that, we're really trying to help the game industry with this thing that, it's, I try to be a positive person, so I try not to throw shade, but one thing I will share is very consistent. We talk to studios and they all need playtesting. All of them. It's not even, the only people that don't think they need playtesting are folks that are first time in the game industry, building their first game, and are early on in development. Those are the only folks that we hear, oh yeah, I don't need that. I can ask my mom. I can ask my friends, right? So everybody needs it. And nobody's happy with what they get. So I'm not saying that we solve this. I think that we're in early innings, and it's our aspiration to solve this. I don't think you ever will, because ultimately we're talking about people, and nothing's perfect when it comes to doing all this stuff. But that's our aspiration, is to really do this in a way that not just gives the studios and the game makers what they need, but also takes care of the testers. Gives them a much more reliable source of income,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of sounds like you've maybe had this experience of watching people, studios hire a ton of QA folks and then fire them 6 months later.
Yeah.
That sucks, but that's just the way the industry works right now. But that's a problem. We can solve that problem. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a world where these things are much more streamlined and everybody wins as a result. So yeah, that's probably my last little bit to add here.
Okay. And go ahead and plug like the social media platforms and how people can get in touch with you guys, and then we'll wrap it up from there.
We're very creative. The name of the product and company, Playtesting GG, is literally the website. So we're at playtesting.gg. Put that into a browser of your choice. You will find us. We're also on Twitter at Playtesting GG. So playtesting with 3 Gs at the end. And those kind of our main platforms. We're also on Discord. I'm not going to, spell out the URL here. So I'll just go to playtesting.gg and hit the Discord link there, because I can't remember that alphanumeric combo off the top of my head. But yeah, we're not on Instagram or TikTok. That's more of a reflection of me being a millennial than anything. But yeah, we'll get on there if people ask enough. But we're also on Facebook as well.
Okay. Well, I'll leave links to everything in the description down below for the podcast version as well as the video version that will be available on YouTube. And I just want to thank you again, Idan, for taking time out of your day to come on the show and tell us about Playtesting GG and the benefits of it. And I hope a lot of people got a lot from this, from the audience who may be the casual consumer who may be interested in QA, and from the industry that I've worked with and who watches and listens to the show, like, hey, we need to work with those guys. I hope a lot of people got a lot of takeaways from this. I've had an absolute blast. It's talking to you about your branding, your business, and this project, as well as talking about music and talking about this digital era that we're in, which it's just wild. Like, I feel like we watched movies and stuff like this, back when we were kids, and like, that seems so far off. And then now we're living in that as adults, and it's just so crazy. But absolute honor having you on the show. Would love to have you on again. And with that being said, you guys can catch this episode of the podcast on every major podcasting platform, audio version on every platform, video version will be on Spotify, who is the sponsor of the show, as well as on YouTube. So with that being said, we're signing out, and we hope you guys have a blessed and aloha rest of your day. For your time, for listening to this episode of the Casanova Podcast, #1 podcast in Hawaii. If you found this episode to be incredibly enjoyable, informative, or if there's anything you gain from it, or any insight, or anything that's good that you really, really enjoyed, make sure whatever platform you're listening to it on, or if you're watching it, leave a comment if that's available on the platform, like it, share it around with someone you think would enjoy it, and give us some feedback, because your feedback is exactly what we need to keep this show going. And if you're wondering what are some ways that you could support the show, we got various ways. We've got Patreon, we have channel memberships over on YouTube, as well as Subscribestar, Coffee, and so much more. Links for everything will be in the description of the podcast, so make sure you go check that out. And with all that being said, I hope you have an aloha rest of your day.
Let them know that I'm next level. I'm a whole new kind of guy, yeah. Yes, at the top spot, in case you forgot. We the ones that got the block hot, bullet got the shot.